From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Uncovering history.
What did we get ourselves into?
See what two Michigan farmers found in a field that still has people talking. Keeping the tradition going. Meet the dairy producers who will be making sure the winner of the Indy 500 drinks milk. And rewriting the rules.
So I think there's certainly going to be a requirement on the Biden administration to, at a minimum, pull that rule back for some significant revisions.
Big changes could be on the way once again for the Waters of the U.S. rule after a decision from the Supreme Court. What it means for farmers and ranchers right now on Ag Day. Good morning, I'm Tyne Morgan coming to you from our Farm Journal studios in Kansas City. Clinton's on vacation. Well, there's been a ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court that will have implications nationwide when it comes to water and farms. The High Court siding with an Idaho couple in its battle against the EPA over the Waters of the U.S. rule. AgDay's Michelle Rook joins us now. Michelle, what does this decision mean for agriculture?
Tyne, the Supreme Court ruling against EPA is a huge win for farmers and ranchers. Not only does it set a precedent, but it has national implications for agriculture, water quality, and development. It also sets the Biden administration back to the drawing board in terms of writing their new WOTUS rule. The case began when Michael and Chantel Sackett purchased a vacant lot in a residential subdivision in Idaho in 2004. They acquired the necessary county permits to develop the site, but the EPA argued that the land was subject to its review because it contained wetlands about 300 feet from Priest Lake. The case focused on the interpretation of the 1972 Clean Water Act and asked for a clearer definition of what the law intended by giving the EPA the authority to regulate the waters of the United States.
In a 9-0 opinion from the court, we got not only a court that found in favor of the Sackett family, but that unanimously ruled that the significant nexus test is not a test that can be used by EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers to determine which features are federally jurisdictional under the Clean Water Act.
This ruling overturns an earlier decision by a federal appeals court that had supported the EPA. Hart says it's a game changer in regards to the writing of the new Waters of the U.S. rule, as the court agreed EPA was clearly overstepping its authority.
So I think there's certainly going to be a requirement on the Biden administration to, at a minimum, pull that rule back for some significant revisions. A majority of the court adopted a test called the significant surface connection test, which means that a feature isn't jurisdictional unless it has a continuous surface connection to downstream traditional navigable waters. That's significantly going to narrow the number and type of features that are subject to Clean Water Act permitting requirements.
The preliminary injunction on the Biden administration's WOTUS rule will stay in effect in 26 states. She says in the meantime, it's not likely EPA will enforce their new rule in the other 24 states. Hart also says the decision signals the Supreme Court wants Congress to do its job in passing legislation to govern the regulations tied to the Clean Water Act. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
Thanks, Michelle. And the American Farm Bureau Federation releasing a statement about the decision. President Zippy Duvall saying, quote, the justices respect private property rights. It's now time for the Biden administration to do the same and rewrite the Waters of the United States rule. Farmers and ranchers share the goal of protecting the resources they're entrusted with, but they deserve a rule that provides clarity and doesn't require a team of attorneys to properly care for their land, end quote. For more reaction to the Supreme Court's decision, make sure to check out agweb.com. We're heading into the unofficial start of the summer grilling season this weekend, and there's some good news for the meat industry, according to a new poll. It found a majority of Americans regularly eat meat and believe it's a healthy choice. The Newsweek poll surveyed 1,500 U.S. voters. It shows 35% of people strongly agreed with the statement that it's healthy to eat meat, with 41% selecting agree and only 4% disagreed, and only 1% strongly disagreed. Now, in addition to those responses, 81% of people asked said they eat meat at least once a week. And while the weather looks favorable for many of those cookouts this weekend, what are we seeing with demand amid higher prices at the grocery store?
The first thing I'm going to say is it's still very good. Now, with that said,
are we clearly seeing signs of softening demand across all species? We absolutely are. We have some things we need to be watching, and certainly as inflationary pressures, recessionary threats impact consumer spending, we're seeing it in the meat case.
And another important issue in the meat industry right now, product of USA labels. USDA's Food Safety and Inspection Service releasing results of a consumer survey it did. The survey involved 4,800 adults, and it reveals 63% thought the labels signified that all production processes happened in the U.S., and 21% confessed they didn't know what the correct interpretation of these labels were. A new product of the USA rule would only allow the use of the label of Made in the USA for meat from animals that have been born, raised, slaughtered, and processed entirely within the U.S. And while the weather may look warm and dry for all of those barbecues this weekend, it's not good news for farmland in need of some rain. USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey sharing this map. He says the Midwest is already starting to see an expansion of dryness, which you can see in yellow. And he says concerns are building about the possibility of a flash drought with temperatures rising through the holiday weekend. Meteorologist Courtney Jorgensen joins us. Courtney, how high could temperatures go this weekend?
It is going to be a very warm one as we head into the end of this week. Take a look at the temperatures across the country today. Still a little bit on the cooler side, starting that warming trend in the Midwest through the central portions of the country, though hitting those 80-degree marks. Tomorrow morning, pretty mild for most of the areas across the nation. Then as we head into Saturday afternoon, it's going to be heating up even more, with many of us hitting that 80-degree mark. Going to be a warm one there, and that warming trend will continue. In fact, as we take a look at that temperature trend in those coming days, quite well above normal temperatures for the northern half of the country. We do get a little bit cooler further towards the south. Now let's take a look at outside right now in Arizona this morning. A picture perfect start to the day. John Dinsmore sharing this beautiful snapshot for us. John is a fourth generation vegetable, grain, and hay farmer. Thanks for sharing, John. I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
USDA and the Department of Homeland Security have officially cut the ribbon on a new national bio and agro defense facility. The 500,000 square foot facility is located in Manhattan, Kansas, right next to Kansas State University. The first of its kind facility in the U.S. will allow scientists to study and diagnose critical animal diseases. Once it's fully up and running, it will employ about 400 people. It replaces the Plum Island Animal Disease Center in New York that is more than 68 years old. Can anything be done to stop the soybean slide on the markets? Michelle is back with market analysis coming up. And later, two farmers working the land uncover a massive link to the past, one that has historians rewriting the history book that's in the country. Also, we have another Zoetis Freedom Recognition Sweepstakes by Farm Journal giveaway recipient. Congratulations to Jacob Long of Nelson Long Family Farms. You've just won a special edition golf bag. We'll announce the final winners, including the grand prize winner this weekend on U.S. Farm Report. Also, don't forget, today is the last day to get your name in. Get your phone out and scan the QR code that's on your screen. You can register to win one of those golf bags or the grand prize, an American flag wall display, just in time for Memorial Day. Well, soybeans slid even further on Thursday. Michelle Brook is back with Alan Brugler in Markets Now.
Grains closed mixed on Thursday. Alan Brugler is joining us with analysis, and we had kind of mixed trade. Talk a little bit about why. Was it just because we were going into a 3-day holiday there, so there's some positioning ahead of that?
I think that's a lot of it. We were up Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in some of those contracts. Of course, the rally actually started last week, bounced off a really good long-term technical support. You've got a little bit of a weather story there with the hot and dry for the most of the Corn Belt next week and potentially into the following week. So that drove the rally. But again, it's a 3-day weekend. You've got budget negotiations going on, or debt ceiling, I should say. Nobody's sure about the financial side of it. So it makes some sense if you're a spec and you're long to take a little money off the table here today.
So we take a pause. We come in Monday night and we see that the extended forecast is still pretty dry. Do we put a lot more weather premium into these markets?
Well, I think corn in particular has that leverage. Okay, you already have pretty tight supplies in the Western Corn Belt, and then that's the area with the biggest dryness issue here. If that starts to spread east into Illinois or Iowa, Iowa's got some dry pockets showing up in the drought monitor now, then the market has to put a little more premium in there. We can't be as comfortable about that 181 or 182 bushel national average yield. And yeah, so I think we started to put a little risk premium back in, but we didn't have any in there. And it definitely could put some in after the holiday if the forecast verify.
The offset, though, is just demand. We had really horrible exports again on Thursday, didn't we?
Yeah, exports are not good, and the story is pretty clear and pretty long running. Okay, we've got a lot of competition out of Brazil, particularly. They've cozied up to the Chinese. They're selling them the corn, and we're not getting the business there. Soybeans, of course, they've been the largest supplier for several years now in the world export market, and they have 155 million, 156 million ton crop coming out of the field that needs to go somewhere. So you're starting to see periodically the supply tightens up in Brazil, but they're really not going to be low on export beans until September, October.
Okay, something to watch. Thanks for joining us, Alan Brugler with Brugler Marketing. We'll have more Ag Day coming up.
To talk to Alan about his ag market professional services, call Brugler Marketing and Management at 402-697-3623 or visit his website, www.bruglermarketing.com.
It is certainly going to continue with these heated temperatures, especially for the northern half of the country. You can see quite well above normal temperatures all the way into next week as well. Towards the southwest, though, still dealing with a bit on the cooler side. As we work our way through the coming days, though, we're also going to be dry on top of those heated temperatures, especially over in the Great Lakes area. Now, off towards the west coast, they're going to see an additional amount of rainfall, and that is going to be in that next week, and so that precipitation outlook is pretty high out there. We're still running along this blocking ridge out there as we take a look at the jet stream heading through Saturday and on into Sunday. This just continues. This pattern is going to be long-lived all the way into next week. There's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Hopefully we'll start to get a break. You can see off towards the northwest trying to work that way in, but we're still holding on to that ridge all the way through and into next week. As far as how much precipitation we might see by Friday, well, let's take a look throughout the day on Friday, rather, I should say. Looks like we'll see at least some rainfall out there, not as much as we need, but some areas maybe 2 inches plus, very isolated 3 inches plus. We certainly need more rainfall as well too. Let's take a look at the timeline for you as we head through the evening tonight and on into the weekend. There's not much going on in the Great Lakes, but over on the southeast coastline, you can see there is some precipitation moving its way on by, but for most of the country, we're pretty dry, and that has been a continuing trend as we head outside right now for that drought monitor. You can see what that is doing, still continuing into the central plains with exceptional drought. Now let's take a look at those select cities. And Murray, Kentucky, going to be sunny today, 77 degrees out there. As we head over to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, mostly sunny skies, high of 90. And over into Wheatland, Wyoming, a mix of sun and clouds, high 78. Chance for showers and thunderstorms coming in.
Another tradition this weekend involves a big bottle of cold milk. Meet the dairy producers who will serve as milkmen at this year's annual Indy 500. That's next. Besides grilling out this holiday weekend, another Memorial Day tradition in the running is the Indy 500. And waiting at the winner's circle for the winner is a big bottle of ice-cold milk. The American Dairy Association of Indiana surveyed this year's drivers to see what kind of milk they would like to drink if they win the greatest spectacle in racing. And here's what they found. 28 drivers selected whole milk, 3% selected 2% milk, and 2 selected skim milk. Alex Palou is on the pole position, and you can see there he's all about whole milk. He narrowly edged out Renus VK, who also prefers whole milk. And here's a look at the Indiana dairy producers who will be in the winner's circle to deliver that milk personally. Carrie Estes will serve as this year's veteran milkman for the race. The first-generation dairy farmer milks 150 crossbred cows on a hybrid grazing and confinement dairy located just southeast of Indianapolis. This year's rookie milkman is Alex Neuenschwander. He's a fourth-generation dairy farmer from Bluffton, Indiana. He will also be on hand at the Speedway to learn the ropes from Estes on how it all works. And then he'll actually serve as the veteran milkman at next year's race. Well, as many of you know, sometimes you find a lot more than just corn and soybeans lurking in farm fields. But see what a couple of farmers in Michigan unearthed. That changed the history books. We'll show you this amazing find coming up next.
In the Country on Ag Day is brought to you by Pivot Bio. What if you had the nitrogen you need already on seed? Pivot Bio is the first company to apply nitrogen on seed. The nitrogen you need, now on seed, from Pivot Bio. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
Well, farmers make their living from the land, but they aren't the first to call it home, as two farmers in Michigan recently discovered while attempting to upgrade their field tile. AgDay's Clinton Griffiths reports.
All our tiles come together basically in
then they go out, keep on
head out
going
down
down
the
there.
ditch,
Yeah.
basically.
In 2015, a week before harvest, neighbors Trent Satterwhite and Jim Brisley began installing a field tile lift station on this newly acquired 40 acres in Chelsea, Michigan.
We actually had a backhoe and a mini excavator, so one of us on each side.
We're trying to be on each side so that we could not have as big a hole.
Until they hit something hard and pulled up what looked like a fence post.
And I asked Jim, "Did you bury any fence here?" And he said, "No."
What was your first thought when you hit something?
I just wanted to get the tiling done.
What did we get ourselves into?
What they got into was a massive pile of bones.
Another foot, we could have missed it completely.
The discovery made clear as next a pelvis bone with its honeycomb texture emerged from the hole.
And we actually went and read the laws first to see what kind of trouble we were in or we could get ourselves into. And
well, who owned it?
Yeah,
you know,
basically.
I mean,
who has the rights, and it come down to it's private land. It belongs to the landowner, and he calls the shots.
Next, they made a phone call.
We called down to the university and talked with them, and they said, well, the world expert is here at U of M.
University of Michigan's Dr. Daniel Fisher.
It's actually not as unusual as you might think.
The global mammoth expert picked up the phone.
Tell me more. And we talked a bit, but it pretty soon became clear that what was really needed is to see them in person.
With harvest looming.
Our fear was down the road they found a mastodon about 20 years ago, and they were like 6 months digging that one up.
By the next day, an entire team was assembled and ready to excavate the prehistoric mammoth from its 15,000-year slumber.
I think they were impressed by how exciting it was.
It was like a circus that day because there was people coming down here and looking, and it wasn't a fast process.
Dan was handing them out of the hole, telling them what number rib it was and everything else. He knew exactly what that animal was.
The final find, a massive hybrid mammoth skull with both 9-foot tusks still attached.
We lifted it up and had a flatbed truck pulled up, and were able to set everything gently down onto foam pads.
The discovery is significant, as evidence suggests the animal was scavenged and purposely sunk to the bottom of a pond by humans.
At the time we did this excavation, nobody yet knew that humans were in this part of Michigan 15,500 years ago.
It changed the record books. And also, Dan had told us it proves that there was a land bridge at one time.
For farmers focused on one season at a time,
It kind of lets you see that we're just a little dot on this map as far as time span of 18,000 years.
Yep.
Our lifespan's a dot on this.
and it's why they're making the most of the experience, even renaming the operation.
There's been a lot of spin-offs. There was a coffee shop that had a mammoth mocha.
From a newly purchased property.
I had just bought this 40-acre chunk, and somebody asked the neighbor what he thought about it, and he says, well, at least you didn't find an oil well.
To the discovery of a lifetime. It's a harvest they'll never forget.
I think when everybody was a little kid, they always wanted to find a arrowhead or a dinosaur bone or something, you know. We're just bigger kids with bigger toys is all.
Thanks, Clinton. And Jim Brisley donated the mammoth bones to the University of Michigan, where they are now on display. And you can read that full story more in depth on agweb.com. Well, that's all the time we have this morning. Thank you for watching. For all of us here at Ag Day, I'm Tyne Morgan. Have a great weekend in Farm Country.